Good afternoon and welcome to the closing plenary session titled Solving Critical Problems of Development the Startup Way. It is not every day when we see a development forum comprising serial entrepreneurs and investors. I think that makes this all the more meaningful. Borders are blurring across disciplines, and the most interesting work seems to happen at the intersections. This afternoon, we have the opportunity to listen to some of these value multipliers. The moderator for the session is Mr. Sujit John, who is the Assistant Resident Editor with the Times of India, Bangalore. He has been with the TOI for 26 years, starting as an assistant editor on the edit page in 1995. 21 of those years have been in Bangalore, with much of his focus on business and technology. He has also briefly worked for the newspaper, The Observer of Business and Politics, and the government's 10th Finance Commission as a researcher. He has an MPhil and an MA from JNU, and also a BA in economics from St. Stephen's College. Thank you all very much for making the time to be here. Over to you, Mr. John.
Thank you, Napina, and happy Independence Day to all of you. Welcome to this concluding session of Charcha 2021. As Napina said, I'm Sujit John, and I'm with the Times of India. From an early age, poverty and sharp inequalities bothered me intensely. I believe that everyone had the right to a dignified life. Those thoughts during my university days even attracted me to the communist movement. Of course, the collapse of the Soviet Union and what followed changed a lot for me. But even then, I couldn't stand the other extreme, that the trickle-down theory, the belief that financial benefits to big business will somehow trickle down to the less fortunate. I must say I'm still searching for answers, but I like those who try to respond to poverty directly. That's been a big reason why I have been following the Nudge Foundation ever since Atul Satija founded it. And today we have with us three other outstanding professionals who have helped found ventures that are trying to deal with many of the root causes of poverty and the lack of development in India. We have Meena Ganesh. Meena is the founder and CEO of Portia Medical, India's largest and fastest growing home healthcare company, which she co-founded in 2013. Early on, Meena set up Tesco's Shared Services Center in India and then was a promoter and board member of Tutor Vista and CEO and MD of Pearson Education Services. She's today also the co-promoter of nearly a dozen new age internet and tech-enabled startups, including Big Basket, Homelane, Fresh Menu, and Bluestone.com. Welcome, Meena. We have Prashant Prakash. Prashant is a partner at venture capital firm Axel. Prashant began investing in Indian technology startups in 2004, well before our startups acquired global attention. At Axel, Prashant focuses on consumer internet services, online marketplaces, and SaaS companies. He has led investments in AgroStar, Bluestone, Book My Show, CleverTap, Fab Hotels, Homelane, Inframarket, Crop Tiger, Ento Mojo, and many others. Prashant, nice to have you here. And we have Nitin Kamath. Nitin is quite the hero nowadays. Nitin is the founder and CEO of Zerodha. In just 10 years, Zerodha has become India's largest stock brokerage firm. It has 6 million customers and contributes to over 15% of the stock exchange retail trading volumes. Nitin is also the founder of Rainmatter, a fintech incubator that is trying to grow the capital market. More recently, Nitin also set up the Rainmatter Climate.
I think Mr. John has lost his network. I think what we can do is begin with some opening comments. Mr. Prakash, would you like to begin?
Yeah, thanks, Napina. I think just taking off from the theme of this Charsha, there is the good news is that there is a lot of. John, we were just getting started with some opening remarks. Okay.
Please continue.
John will be back. Yeah. So the good news is that I think there is convergence that I see already happening, or we are on a path of convergence between the business sector and the development sector. There's largely two buckets of, I guess, this convergence. One is even in not-for-profits, I'm seeing a new flavor of not-for-profits coming up compared to the traditional NGOs. And these the newer generation of these NGOs are trying to adapt to and imbibe some of the same elements of the startup world, right? Which is urgency, bias to action, being extremely practical and pragmatic when it comes to what to expect, and have very, very strong short-term goals too, while you have these long-term objectives, and not to get lost sometimes in uh, you know emotional the emotional aspects of the development world, and look at real impact and real outcomes. So that's on the not-for-profit world. In the for-profit world, I think things are even more interesting and accelerating in areas like climate tech, agri-tech. You're seeing startup entrepreneurs taking on massive challenges, and also being able to raise the right capital. So the convergence of capital, great talent, and the type of problems these entrepreneurs are taking on are really making it a very nice, potent combination, and helping accelerate the solutions, and for some of the larger challenges that we have had over the which people were chipping away slowly, but I'm just seeing the momentum build up because of these convergences.
Mr. John, are you?
Yeah. I'm here. Was there a connection problem? I don't know. Was it my side? I don't
Yes,
know.
yes, John. Looks like you have a bad connection on your side.
I don't know. The internet looks fine. I don't know. I couldn't figure out. Okay. Sorry.
So we
Sorry about
just
that.
began with some opening comments. I had
Yeah,
asked
yeah.
Prakash for his view.
Yeah,
Over
sure,
to you
sure.
again.
Meena?
Sure. Let me add to that. So, just coming from a very different perspective, because Prashant has really covered the changes that are going on in the startup sector or in NGOs who are able to behave more like startups from multiple angles. I want to bring a very different perspective that one of the ways in which development can be accelerated, in my view, is to use the principles of startup and actually help create a large number of grassroots level entrepreneurs who, in situ, in the places where they live and grow, can they become entrepreneurs, have a livelihood that gets created there, and in the process make a difference in some of the key developmental requirements of that location. And in that context, one of the ideas that I've been working on and starting to pilot is to create healthcare entrepreneurs. Because as we know currently, especially as the pandemic has shown, the healthcare infrastructure in the country, both the private and the public, are limited. And especially when it goes into the rural or the semi-urban areas, for it, the ability of the existing infrastructure to manage all the challenges that are being thrown up in these kind of situations is massive. There is a need for communities and individuals to be aware, to have better access to primary care, and to be able to manage chronic or long-term illnesses on their own without necessarily having to go to a facility for care. So, bringing some of these thoughts together, can you create a whole cadre of healthcare entrepreneurs, for instance, who can help provide better access to healthcare, but also earn livelihood in that process. So that's just one example of a potential uh, big developmental impact, which has a combination of two objectives: healthcare and livelihood. And I'm sure the same idea can be extended to multiple areas as well. So I'll stop here. I'm sure Nitin would like to come.
Go on, Nitin.
Yeah, thanks. No, I'd like to add to both Prashant and Meena. So we started Rainmatter FinTech in 2016. I mean, the idea was to grow the capital market ecosystem in India. So we opened up APIs that help people get over all the regulatory, kind of burdens, and also, ended up funding, which was unconditional. The funding was essentially to say, can we go grow the markets, grow the ecosystem, get more people to invest in the markets, and then we kind of realized the leverage we brought on the table, and as we did, well as a business. Like you originally said, right? One of the questions I have is around inequality, as in, I think this whole, a stockbroker saying it sounds weird, but this is something I question all the time about the concentration of wealth, and I think the onus should be on on folks wherever there is a concentration to do whatever to give back, and so that's how we started Rain Matter Foundation. A couple of years back. So the idea is, again, what Meena said, right? It's about creating livelihoods. I think the way we are going, the two causes that we are very, where we are very clued on. One is around livelihoods, and then second is around climate change. And we believe that maybe in India, in an Indian context, the answer to both of them lie in each other. So, so we're helping, folks build farming collectives, right? Try to see if we can, enable this reverse migration. One of those good things with COVID has been that people have been going back. Can you make them stay back? And the problem in India is generally, I'm guessing, we all know that the farmers are marginalized. So is there a way we can get farmers together, and, can businesses like us, who can fund that collective, right? So that's something that I'm closely, I can closely relate to. The second thing, what we are thinking is, can you kind of create a digital green asset? Because on our business side, we cater to maybe the top 1-2% of this country, where all the wealth concentration is. So can you, like how you buy, shares of a company? Can you buy shares of a forest? Can you, buy
Shares of what? Shares of?
of a forest, of a
Okay.
can you create like a, like an equity kind of an asset class, where people can buy into renewable, sustainable forest, so these are the kind of questions that we are asking, and yeah, I think I still have more questions than answers. We're just getting started in this journey.
Okay. Prashant, I missed, of course, a little bit of what you said, but you kind of indicated that capital, talent, and the kind of problems that entrepreneurs are taking up are created a really good ecosystem. In your experience, can you give us some examples of the kind of some great work that has happened among your startups?
Yeah, so I'll give you one example of a not-for-profit, which is a education startup, which was trying. It's called Shikshana, and they trying to solve the child motivation problem, and they're trying to see that, is the child ready to. So you could have a great school, you could have, and these are largely government schools. So where there is a deficit of infrastructure, there is so some of those have got solved over time, but still the quality of education in India and outcomes have not dramatically changed. So we said, what could be the issue? The issue we think is a lot to do with the type of motivation children have in these areas, and what society and parents are able to kind of induce to them. There was a lacuna, and that's what made Shikshana kind of focus on this area that didn't get a lot of attention, and they were able to do it in a what I would call as an incubator accelerator model. So use private funding to incubate the idea, show statistically significant data, maybe in a taluk or a district, and then get state level adoption, then move on to multiple states and so on. And if you see some of the ideas that they used, they leveraged technology to monitor, because one of the big challenges is that how do you, when you're introducing these systems into the government ecosystem, you need to pre-plan governance. You need to pre-plan, getting the right analytics back from the field. where there is a connectivity challenge, where there is no smartphones with everybody. So can you build some of these ground up and leverage technology for scale? So scale, even in not for profits, does require technology, there are most of these solutions that are just not urban only, that they will. So if you look at the number of schools in Karnataka, for example, of the 40-50,000 higher primary and secondary schools, less than 20-25% are urban, 75% are rural. And so you have at least 1 million children that you need to address who are rural. And without technology, you wouldn't be able to do that, because you would roll out the system, you would be able to show it in a small area, but when you scale it, it's just going to fail. It's going to, if you don't build the systems around it to help it get monitored and managed, and the outcomes measured, it's just not. You'll never know that it worked, right? So I think Shikshana is a good example. And then when one state kind of sees the results, other states start picking it up. And so there are two big takeaways from Shikshana. One, use private funding and institutional CSR mostly for just proving the model. Then you got to leverage government uh, funding and capabilities to scale. That is the first big learning. The second learning is, when you build these prototypes and when you build these smaller scale, work on the technology platform that is going to help it scale later.
And Shikshana is showing metrics that are you are very optimistic about.
Very optimistic, because we are able to measure and course correct. Because when you scale, things are just, of course, not going to work the same way. There are going to be parts of a state which are more backward, where you'll need slightly different kinds of interventions. There'll be other states where the students are, like in the coastal areas of Karnataka, the students are really good, so they need more than motivation. They need a few other things to really upgrade themselves and get better, because they're already at a decent level. So it lets you kind of measure all of this and personalize it and customize it to an extent, because everybody, as in the educational department, the teachers, the parents, are all able to be on the same platform through technology.
Has it gone beyond the pilot stage?
Yes, no, they're in all. So the interesting thing is, this program has now been called Prerna, and they're in all government schools in the state of Karnataka,
Okay.
and Telangana, partially, and parts of Maharashtra.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Meena, is that your experience as well? I mean, technology, government, these are important factors in scaling and proving the concept itself and all that.
Yeah. So and again, I'll speak from the health perspective. The what the pandemic has obviously shown is that having a very strong digital health layer is going to be a prerequisite for providing good access and quality of healthcare across the country, especially in those locations where access to healthcare is even more challenging. Even in the urban centers, that became very essential, as we all saw during the period of the pandemic. Not just during the lockdown, but even after that, a lot of senior citizens and people with comorbidities do not wish to go out to clinics or to hospitals for consultation unless the intervention required can only be done at a hospital. There is a desire to consume healthcare away from a hospital, and that's not a bad thing. That's actually a very good thing, because what it does is extends the overall reach and the effectiveness of healthcare infrastructure in the country. Now, if you just take that forward and say, how can that help with the development goals in the rural sector or the semi-urban areas where there is access issues? So, if I just go back and talk about the healthcare entrepreneur that I am piloting currently, the only way to make that healthcare entrepreneur successful is combining technology and the local skill on the ground. So these healthcare entrepreneurs are being provided with digital with point of care digital devices which can capture some of the key healthcare metrics and can transfer that into a back-end platform, which then captures the longitudinal health condition or the health vectors of an individual, and basis that you can then decide at what point you need to intervene from home. And then again, the intervention can partly be done through a teleconsultation, and of course, you need to do on the ground work, but you know when to go in for what. The problem that we have faced in India so far is that everything has been physical center located, center based, and if that's, you don't know who needs to go to the center. The centers will always have a shortage of whatever, you know, there are all kinds of resources will also always be in shortage. By using a combination of technology and the right people on the ground, you can then decide who to focus your attentions on with the more rarer and also more expensive physical resources. And in this process, what you're able to do is to ensure that the quality of ongoing care that people need, because everybody who's, especially those that have chronic diseases or even have infectious diseases, need to have a continuity of care which is always missing. So this ensures continuity of care by using technology to monitor them. Are they really doing what they're supposed to do at the time that they're supposed to do? Where are the gaps? How do you fill those gaps? By nudges or by physically visiting them and ensuring that they're doing what they need to do. So that's one piece, which is the technology piece. Now, how does this work alongside the government and its infrastructure? I mean, there's no way you can do it without that, because especially in the rural and in the semi-urban areas, uh, in many cases, the primary healthcare center, the government-run primary healthcare center, the wellness centers are very good. People they don't know that they can go there. They don't know uh, what resources are available. They don't know when to go for that. And there's a degree of mistrust also. They end up going to the private. So how do you ensure that these things are connected together? What's happening on the ground, the public infrastructure, getting people into those locations at the right time for the right intervention is something that becomes very valuable. Also, the government themselves have a number of schemes that people are not aware of. What kind of insurance cover they can get, what kind of rebates they can get. So they need to know all of that. So working with the government to ensure that people are able to access all that they already have. I think there is this concept of a hak darshak. How do you combine the healthcare entrepreneur, the hak darshak, and the government scheme so that all of this falls well in place, and you're getting the best out of what the government is already trying to put in place is probably the best way forward in my mind.
Okay, so it's gone. Is it still in the pilot stage now?
We have multiple pilots going on in multiple locations, so it's still early stages to say that we have transformed, but the initial outcome from the pilots are extremely encouraging. There is a lot of pull from the ground. People want this kind of service. We are able to see the long-term health records of people and intervene at the right time so that they don't drop the care that they're supposed to be going.
Okay, somebody's asking where are the pilots happening? Somebody from the audience.
Yeah. There are some pilots that we have kicked off in Karnataka, one in Rajasthan, and we're just about to kick off some in Maharashtra as well.
Sorry, I again missed bits.
I said we have a couple of pilots going on in Karnataka, one in Rajasthan, and kicking off one in Maharashtra. Sure. I think he's lost connection again. So maybe we can just continue the conversation. Nitin perhaps can come in. And,
Yeah.
I was
Yeah,
just
this has never happened before. I don't know why this is happening.
Nitin, over to you. Why don't you?
Yeah, no. Anyways,
Yeah, go on, Nitin.
yeah. So, like I said earlier, there are two threads that we are working on around creation of livelihoods and helping farmers. One, we are helping an organization called Swayam create a 100-acre collective near Bandipur. We've started working with Organic Mandir, and with Akshay Kalpa. Uh, uh, on the creation of this digital green asset, which is more a longer term project. The good news is SEBI has put out a paper on discussion paper on the social stock exchange, where we've been actively participating and giving them feedback. Because once those regulations come into play, once we have a social stock exchange, to take off an idea like that, will be easier. Um, what we are also doing is we're creating we're rewilding a 100-acre piece of land using permaculture principles. So this is at the border of Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and the idea is whenever the social stock exchange is, the regulations come through, we can use this as a pilot. And I've been talking to Prashant quite a bit on seeing, if we can speak to the government and go do this at scale if once the regulations are in place. But these are some of the things that we are working on, which is apart from helping a bunch of NGOs that we are anyways doing this.
Okay. What are you looking at? A for-profit model or a not-for-profit one?
Someone like Organic Mandia and Akshay Kalpa are more for profit, right? So one of the investments we've had as Rainmatter is also in this company called ERP Next, who's built like a free and open source, ERP platform. So we are trying to provide, wherever possible, this help in terms of technology, by talking to this team. Swayam, for example, is a non-profit. But the good thing about Swayam is that they've already identified the next 500,000 acres. Once this project is through, so there is scale here. And one of the things that we are trying to mainstream is this whole idea of startups who are doing well to actually get out there and do something to give back, right? As in almost peer pressure. Some of our friends and colleagues to do the same things. So.
Okay. Madhurima Mantha asking, social stock exchange sounds amazing. Do you think this can work with agricultural land as well?
Yeah, so the discussion paper says you can do both for profit and not for profit. So we still we still have to see how the final thing comes through. But right now it seems like you can potentially do agricultural land as well.
Okay. Prashant, for profit, not for not for profit. Where does it? Which works best? Where? What is your sense?
So, I think there are problems which, for which there are very visible markets today, right? I think the case in point is the whole agri space in India. For a long time, the agri space had mostly NGOs and rural not-for-profits working on these challenges, right? And at very small, the village level. But I think there's two things that have changed there. One, like Meena was saying, the whole idea of local entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship today is getting more and more visibility for every Indian through social media or through other forms. So when I am a startup and wanting a connect today, so let's say I'm an agri-tech startup starting out somewhere from Bangalore, but then I want to work with 15, 20, 30 rural districts in South India. Now, the option of using village level entrepreneurs and local entrepreneurs today, just like what Meena was saying in the case of health entrepreneurs, is becoming more real, right? So at some point, the ability to scale faster because of the support of the last mile entrepreneurship that is taking root in these rural areas will make it more interesting for profit, right? Now, there is, like Nitin said, there are two levels of benefits here. One, there's a local entrepreneur who doesn't have to come searching for an IT job to Bangalore, so he or she is able to, in his own village, actually create a tech enabled business, right? Supporting like for example, the whole output business in agri, right? So if I'm a farmer somewhere in Bijapur in Karnataka, I don't have to depend on the local mandi or the local broker or the local agri APMC. Now, through these digital exchanges, I can do both intrastate and interstate trade and get a lot better value for my produce. So why is there a need for a local entrepreneur? Because you need to aggregate demand. So you will not be able to, an individual farmer is just not going to be find the produce he or she has interesting enough to trade with somebody. So you need a local entrepreneur who can aggregate, let's say, one truckload or two truckloads, which then can be traded with somebody from Karnataka, let's say, with Rajasthan or any other part of the country. So there is a big convergence, like we started this conversation of local entrepreneurship. And now your other question of for profit and not for profit, there is the idea of a FPO. An FPO is considered to be a not for profit company, which is a collective that helps aggregate farmers. And it's a type of a company where farmers are shareholders, and they play the same role of a local village level entrepreneur, but it's a not for profit. Now, it's really situational. We have seen places where FPOs are playing a good role and helping aggregate and trade in these digital exchanges with other traders in other parts of the country. And in some areas, the FPOs are not that great, and you need local village level entrepreneurs who are probably going to do it for profit, right? So I think these worlds are all kind of mixing and matching, and whatever works to make the core intent here. The core mission is, how can the small marginalized farmer get more for what he or she produces? As far as that goal is intact, there could be multiple mechanisms and multiple paths to achieve that.
So let us keep experimenting, is it?
Keep experimenting, and I think keep trying various hybrid models of. And there's another organization that I'm involved in called Krishi Kalpa, which connects startups to these village level entrepreneurs and FPOs. Because startups also find it difficult to connect to NGOs, find it difficult to connect. So Nitin, for example, keeps asking me, how do I scale my stuff? How do I connect with the right government agency? So you need kind of a NASCOM, so to speak, for the agri startup space. So then that's a not-for-profit. So you need an organization like that. So it's an ecosystem thing, Sujit. So you will ultimately at scale find everybody kind of hopefully working together for the same purpose.
Okay. Lots of questions coming in from the viewers. Meena, I think this is for you. Let me put this. Hari Krishna asking, EHR in health tech has huge potential, but for it to scale to the fullest extent possible in a country as vast as India, in my opinion, we need two things: scalable tech, blockchain based, collaborating with government. Any steps in this regard?
So it's a very good point that Hari Krishna is making, that one of the fundamental things for a healthcare system as large as ours to be effective is to have a common EHR. And the lack of that is an issue because it prevents portability of data and connectivity of various systems, etc. And you're not able to see a patient's health records over time, and that can create any number of problems in terms of how you're providing treatment. Now, of course, there are technology platforms that are coming, but also interestingly, the government is doing a lot of work by way of creating the standards that they are specifying. So there's a unified health interface standard that the government has come up with. There's a complete set of blocks that they have created of all the different pieces of the healthcare infrastructure that they believe will be required for all the different, whether it is the individual doctors or the healthcare providers, or organizations like a company like Portia, or an insurance company, and of course the consumer. How do you get all of them on one common platform so that there is ease of access and ease of data exchange? So it is a journey, of course. It's going to take a long time. And here, this kind of a UHI kind of is one of the first pieces that they are actually the government has put out for people to consult on, and for us to say whether this will work or what we need to do. And this is the time for the private sector to also come and see what the government is putting out, provide their consultation, use that as the sandbox facilities that are getting provided, work on that, see how we can. Because what happens is that each of us is coming with one piece, and if there is a central piece of infra that the technology, digital infra government is providing, very good. So all of us should see how we can first help in the creation of that and then usage of that, so that access becomes so much easier. So it is certainly something that's a big one. But if I may just using the same theme, I feel that there are a lot of startups with excellent ideas. They're creating a lot of solutions, which would be point solutions. There's somebody who's creating an excellent point of care device for measurement of X number of vitals of patients, with fully digitalized, all the data will go into the cloud and so on and so forth. What's the best way for them to get scale? Best ways to work in our governments, or in the rural sector, or work along with the public health, or else get foundations and get CSR monies to help scale this in those in the rural and semi-urban areas, and bring in the government at the right time. Once some pilots are seen as successful, then you can bring in the government, and the scale that an entrepreneur can get or a startup can get out of, if that becomes successful, is enormous. I mean, there's no other scale which can be as big as that. So there is every reason for entrepreneurs and foundations and governments to work together if we want to really change things at scale.
Okay. Nitin, government, I mean, you also find the government very important to whatever you're planning. What all do you expect from the government?
Yeah, no, I mean, see, the thing is, we are still early in this to actually go seek out help from the government as much as so once, like I said, especially on this idea around creating green assets which people can own. I think once we have piloted and we've shown, and there are regulations from SEBI that allows uh, for something like this to happen, I think that's when we would personally want some help from the government to actually be able to do this at scale. I mean, we've had some conversations around taking. I mean, this is more around climate change, which can also create green jobs of sorts, which is seeing if we can take large parcels of land and you rewild it, and maybe in the process also create carbon credits, which can be like a revenue for the government, and see if we can create jobs in the whole process, right? As in, I mean, that's a conversation that we are having. As in, I think Western Ghats, for example, there's a lot of rewilding opportunity in the Western Ghats, and uh, so yeah. So I mean, if maybe if government could, it'll be nice if the government actually put out a bunch of projects and said, what, we need support in all of these, and people, businesses who can, why don't you reach out to us, right? Because if say the forest department did it, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people like me would jump on the opportunity to be able to do it, because one of my personal learnings with this whole giving back over the last few years has been that giving back is a lot tougher than making it, and so the skills required to give back is completely different, and I think it's about getting founders together as well, as in, like, people like us who scale businesses to get together. I think that's where Prashant, Act, have done a great job. I think you created a forum where you brought in people who scale businesses to get together. Now I think if you could make those opportunities easier, I mean, I think there's a lot of wealth being created in India, and a lot of the folks are conscious about giving back. So it's quite crazy how many people reach out to me, founders especially, saying, Nathan, can you give some ideas on how to, because our giving back has gotten us some press. So people reach out saying, how do we start, and etc. So yeah, so I think if government could potentially put out a bunch of things saying, what, we need help in these places, maybe that'll help as well. So,
Okay. Are you able to respond to everybody who sends you a mail?
yeah, we are. I mean, see, one of the big reasons for doing whatever we're doing with Rain Matter is to actually get others to do it as well. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a large problem, and I mean, I don't think one or two foundations can do it, right? As in, it has to be like a mass movement of sorts. So if we can enable as many folks where there is concentration of wealth to give back, and make it easy, give them, because the big problem here, like I realized when we started, was I don't know how to start, right? I mean, uh, like, you have to trust an NGO. You have to, and the skills required to trust is very different. I mean, it's not a product where you can say, in 6 months show me, have an MVP ready and stuff like that. As in, so yeah. So I think, if people get together and do this, I think there is a better chance of this working at scale.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Prashant, ACT is a great initiative. Lots of people are involved in ACT, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Nitin
And that's the one you said should be a NASCOM-like body.
yeah, so NASCOM, but I mean that actually I was referring to a different organization, but ACT is more of is a platform with the coming together of startups, founders, venture capitalists, and the individual partners of these venture funds, and investment bankers, and the ability to work with the government. So all of these have come together, and the outcome is that we have been able to get capital on the table, so which is really important. So a lot of these challenges require the ability to fund, reasonable amounts of money, right? So if you want to uh, take any of these to a nationwide scale, and one of the yardsticks we use is that, or at least 1 million people getting impacted, right? So when you're trying to start out and fund projects, and we do it in a grant model in ACT, so it makes it very easy. So there's no conflicts. How much equity, where does the profits go? So we could uh, have other folks, with the leverage of our money coming in with for profit, with the equity money, but the act money itself is just a pure grant. And we have, of course, done a lot of work in the health sector, and Meena has been one of our anchor participants. We then followed it with the education sector, where Ashish Dhawan and Mohit Patnagar are playing a key role along with Mekin. And then the environment sector is where I'm working with GV from Sequoia and Nitin very closely. So these are the verticals, and each of these verticals will provide a catalytic kind of effect in those verticals by bringing together all the stakeholders. And in addition, we add capital and government connects. So hopefully, we just speed up and provide momentum for a lot of startups who would not have otherwise gotten off the ground. Because one thing we have to understand is things like climate tech are very early in this country. There's less than maybe 5 companies in this country which have even gotten to any scale. So there's a lot of seeding effort that needs to be done. And if you have to uh, provide enough critical mass of early startups in that ecosystem, you need everybody to come together. And I think that's what Nitin was talking about, that ACT can hopefully play a role to get these startup entrepreneurs started. How do they participate in this giving? And ACT provides a platform for that.
No, great initiative. I know a lot of things are falling in place, but there's this question from Parikshit Menon asking, how can the entrepreneurs in the development sector be celebrated, give visibility like the ones for the for-profit space? I guess we in the media are probably the guilty party here, but still, I mean, do you feel that you're not celebrating these entrepreneurs as much as, let's say, people like Nitin or
I,
Meena or Prashant?
I have. May I come in here? I think
Yeah, yeah, sure, Meena.
there's a fundamental flaw in how we celebrate. We celebrate basis valuation. We celebrate basis fundraise. That is not good enough. That's not an appropriate metric in my view for continuous celebration. That's good. It's a point in time. It's the impact which needs to be celebrated, and that's why unless we start celebrating impact, even from the even from startups, how do we get to celebrating impact from the not for profit? That's even a much farther cry. There is no there is no valuation and exciting news of that nature to bring in. So I think we need to go back and fundamentally look at what is it that we celebrate. We are always celebrating the vanity metrics rather than the real metrics. I'm sorry to be very
No, no,
blunt here,
true.
but until we change that, I don't think anybody's going to celebrate any impact
How do we think we
for.
can change it?
Well, it's about, as you are sitting here as journalists, that's probably one of the things that you should seriously think about. How do you create a discourse which is more about the outcome and the impact rather than about just the metrics which are exciting and newsworthy? So once you start to do that, then you can bring in different kinds of impact, some of which are business impact, some of which are development impact, some of which are just giving visibility to small pieces of work that are happening in some corner just because they're so important to what can be in the future. So we have to bring all of that into the middle of public discourse. Otherwise, it does not get the due recognition that it
Okay.
deserves.
Prashant, is that a concern that you've seen as well?
Yes, I think it's just a new sector, so I'm not going to also be hard on the media, the press, right? So I think you folks are also learning how do you cover this sector? How do you really understand social startups? So it's not very easy to the metrics like Meena said of and the idea of a double bottom line, the idea where local, I mean the impact that it's creating locally, and the disruption is actually that the disruption is not some other big thing. The fact that they're able to create impact in an area where there's been absolutely no impact is should be celebrated, right? So what to measure, and how do you as folks who are in the media, so maybe there is a role that ACT can play there in helping highlight and work closely with the media to bring forth some of these these change makers, right? And make sure those change makers are appropriately given visibility and covered. So I think it's a process, and hopefully we are in early days of that, and we'll just all get better in doing that.
Okay. Nitin, you said you were getting, I mean, some of your projects are getting some attention, is it?
Yeah, no, I mean, one of the things that we are also telling to a lot of these people that we are working with is that today, thanks to the scale of Zerodha, we have access to an audience, right? So we can maybe do the job of storytelling as well a little, right? And that's right on top of a list of things to do. Actually, we run a forum called the Grau, where a lot of these not for profit or for profit initiatives, they're coming and they're talking about themselves, and this whole storytelling is actually on our list of things to do. So but generally I think there is so much of liquidity around the world, and this, as long as this whole $1 billion valuation story, it's gonna take away all the attention for sure, so because this whole money valuations generally, like even as Zerodha, right? As in, while we have never raised money or talk about valuation, like people pick up stuff of our MCA and I just make it all about money. As in, we have never ever gone out and spoken anything about the money. It's just I think it's what audience like, so that's why people tell those stories, I'm guessing. And but yeah, but storytelling is we're actually supporting two initiatives as well. Around storytelling for uh, Factor Daily is doing something around this, and there is the Morning Context who's doing something around this. So we've given grants to both of them to talk more about stories which aren't just about valuations and money.
Okay. Generally, you find a lot of good talent coming in. I found not just programs, youngsters from who've done degrees from Harvard and I don't know where all are coming and joining this segment, the development sector. Is that your experience as well, Prashant? There are a lot
Yes,
of.
yeah, definitely. And I think a platform like ACT really helps because it kind of little bit gets it. I mean, two things. One is Nitin actually creating almost a fund-like structure, right, with Rain Matters, and the fund, it makes it easier for entrepreneurs to understand, oh, okay, now this is more mainstream than it was before. So I think that helps. I think the second thing is the pandemic. I think the pandemic has also um, um, uh, kind of created that urge in people to say, what I mean, uh, what's more important in life? What are the things that I should be focusing on? Can I do things that are important for really things like that matter, like health and like what Meena is working and the environment and so on. So I think this combination of uh, newer platforms that are more relatable to these entrepreneurs and uh, recent large kind of impacts like the pandemic have helped them kind of come in and participate and say, what, I can make a change. I did make a small change, so how can I now double down on that? So yes, I think, but there are also a lot of efforts from the government in the creation of incubators, uh, social incubators, and Nudge being one, of course, which is getting support both from corporates and the government. But there are many such incubators and accelerators that are coming up, which also makes it easy for startup entrepreneurs to participate. And finally, seed funds, which are impact only funds, which only fund. There's a fund which only funds projects that are in the circular economy, right? This is a 20-30 million dollar fund. So there are multiple now avenues for the entrepreneur to actually more get a feel for the space, participate, and also maybe join and become an entrepreneur themselves, and also volunteer. So platforms like ACT provide opportunities to volunteer, and then so you can go to the ACT website and look at any of the verticals and say that I want to volunteer here. You could be a full-time investment banker, you could be a project manager or a product manager in a startup or a small or large. But through ACT, you can provide your time and participate, and then finally either start your own social startup or join one of the social startups.
Okay, that's actually one of the questions that came. Ajay Biradar asking how to participate in ACT Foundation.
Yeah, they can just go to the site and start as a volunteer, or if they have an idea, submit it there.
Okay. Meena, local entrepreneurs versus the people who come from Harvard, etc., to do this. What we need a mix of the two, which is the more important one, you think? You are encouraging local entrepreneurs.
No, I don't think it is ever going to be one or the other, because we will get a few from who come from the top colleges, whether Indian or international. But the masses have to be from here. And what my point was that, can we create hundreds of thousands of individuals who become responsible for their own livelihoods in the locations where they live? Now, some of the Harvard MBAs can come and help create a program of this nature, but you still need to create that 100,000 jobs down below, which are not jobs for working for somebody else, but jobs in their own localities. And what can also become is that some of these will not just be self-sufficient, but may be able to employ others, might be able to inspire others around them to do something more meaningful in their locations, and then sort of reducing a little bit of the migration into the big cities and continue to hold a lot of the capability within the locations where they come from. So I don't think it's one or the other. That said, I think some of the talent that's coming into the sector, really top talent, is very encouraging. I worry that this should not be driven predominantly by the knee-jerk reaction to pandemic and a lot of unhappiness that people saw around them. So they feel really propelled to do something, and you start to forget about how bad things were, and you go back to your business. That we should not see a brain drain from this sector back into business. We do need to keep to find ways of keeping them in the social sector, because they can have a huge impact.
Okay. Well, what kind of incomes can they hope to earn? I mean, attractive enough? What is your sense?
I don't know, maybe Prashant can answer that.
Yeah, no, I can
don't know.
answer it from the perspective of the agri sector. So
Right.
some of these village level VLEs, as we call them, or the local entrepreneurs, are able to actually get a quality of life much better than what they would get in an urban area.
Really?
Even if they in entry, yes, very much. So you if you start with a salary of about 12 to 15,000 in their own local, if they start getting to that, they have much better quality of life. And I think there was just one other question on acts impact. So in the most recent pandemic, we were able to provide almost 40,000 concentrators from across the country, and not just the major towns, but we reached every state in the country, and also worked with companies like Portia to also create models to deploy these in a very efficient manner. So, and also do almost now close to 500,000 vaccinations for the frontline workers, not only of startups but frontline workers, which includes kiranas, uh, your street vendors. Almost 500,000 vaccines, mostly in Karnataka, Pune, and a little bit in the NCR region. And all of this funded. So the Act has been able to raise close to about 500 crores for the pandemic,
Okay.
which yeah, and it came from donors across India, and uh, some very very large contributions also from other countries.
Okay. Okay.
In
Very
the healthcare sector, we are seeing between 5 to 10,000 for a half day work is the income that people can earn on a monthly basis, which is not bad. And since we are staying in a village, then this is something which goes a much longer way than.
okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'll just quickly add there. So, so one of the things we did was we've gone completely work from home, and and one of the things that we tried to nudge is move as many people on our team to smaller towns and cities and villages. So, out of the 1,100 people, almost 700 people have moved to towns and smaller towns and villages, and super exciting for us because with the kind of income, I've been talking to them to figure out what are they doing with their money, and they're like, dude, I can't do anything anymore with the kind of money I make, right? So, and it's very exciting that it's kind of enabling local economies around them. These people have gotten house helps. They're contributing to the economies there. So I don't think you can really look at this as what you earn in the cities. I think you have to do what you earn in the cities. As Prashant said, more in terms of quality of life.
Okay. I think we are almost out of time. Great discussion, as all of you said. Enormous amounts of money now available. Great talent now coming into this sector. Um, and the ecosystem in some ways is absolutely ripe for a takeoff. It does need, as somebody pointed out, media also to celebrate this kind of ventures and entrepreneurs, and that's something that we have to take more seriously. And thanks to all of you, great discussion. I'm sure a lot of people will be inspired by what you said to take up more of such projects in a vast variety of areas. I think this country needs people, and plenty of capital available, and government also increasingly becoming responsive
Yes,
to
yes.
the kind of requirements that exist. So all the best to all the people who are looking to start new ventures, and thanks to all of you who have already done this work and are doing a lot more. Napina, over to you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we have come to the end of the plenary session. Thank you all for very much for an inspiring reinterpretation of what development means. For those of us who thought we had to choose between two conflicting positions at opposite ends of the spectrum as consumers, employees, or citizens, we now find ourselves, I think, more unblinkered than before. So thank you very much for your wisdom and views. Closer home, we have someone whose own vision is unencumbered by the boundary lines. I'd like to invite Atul, who's here. He's the CEO and founder of the Notch Foundation, to take the stage and provide his perspective on Charcha 2021 and also propose a vote of thanks. Thank you, Atul. Over to you.
Thanks, Napina, and a very happy Independence Day to everyone here. We started Charcha last year with a very simple objective. The idea was to bring the development sector together in the midst of the first wave of COVID and draw inspiration from all the great work that was happening across the country with the people who had dived in to solve the crisis. The journey that we saw over the last 1 year taught us that we should not be limited to what we know as the development sector. The real need is to bring all stakeholders in India's development together. Development of India is a shared vision. It's an agenda that is shared by all Indians, irrespective of whether you're working in industry, serving in the government, or at a non-profit, or any other community, to make the system work. Charcha 2021 was our attempt in this direction. So today, at the end of nearly 100 sessions, across 13 different events hosted by some of the most admired institutions, we are very encouraged by the power of this idea. 300 plus speakers representing communities from across the country, very diverse locations, very unique perspectives leverage the platform. They engage with each other, but they also engage with an audience of about 4,600 unique visitors in the live sessions, and many thousands more through television and digital streaming platforms as well. The event saw some very amazing exchange of path-breaking ideas and insights. And here are some of the nuggets of wisdom that we heard over the last 3 days. Can we have a little bit of what we heard on the screen, please? So, like we saw, right, we organized Charcha across thematic topics. But while we did that, one of the overarching themes we heard over the last 3 days is how interconnected the various facets of development are. Education, health, skill development, water, climate change, livelihoods, everything is interconnected. So we are all in this together. And if we don't collaborate, we can't advance our sustainable development objectives in tandem. On behalf of the entire team at The Nudge, I want to thank all the co-hosts of Charcha 2021 that collectively put such a brilliant convening and dialogue over the last 3 days. I also want to thank NewsX, The Times of India, Bloomberg, Deccan Herald, and NewJ for being our media partners, and Daily Hunt as our streaming media partner for Charcha 2021. I thank Arthan for leveraging the action that we had at Charcha to bring more talent into the development sector. We need a lot more socially conscious Indians to come and join this sector. So Career Connect will continue this afternoon. So if you are interested to join the sector, please stay on and drop into the booths to explore the opportunities in the space. Before we wrap up, a short credit roll for everyone that pitched in to put Charcha together. I thank you for making Charcha your own and for bringing 100% of yourselves into this effort. While we have a lot of learning for ourselves to improve Charcha as we make progress in this, we will go back, learn from that, and we'll come back bigger and better in 2022. See you then.